We happy? Vincent! We happy?
Yeah, we happy.
It's been a while, hasn't it? It really has. Pretty sure I said something a little bit dumb last time. Like, speaking of which, I want to make this release cadence a lot faster than this because this is kind of ridiculous. Total nonsense. Outright fabrication. Do not believe her lies. So I decided for this one, to chill out a little bit more. Be a little bit calmer, a bit cooler. Take it slow. Because getting this release out has been very, very stressful. First of all, for people who are new here, for anybody who's coming in here from the trailer, or from Reddit, or from the Steam store, let me tell you what Fly Dangerous is, in a very brief summary. This is my attempt to try and marry up the flight mechanics, the boost mechanics, the kind of mass and weightiness of flying in Elite Dangerous, with the game mechanics of Trackmania, which, for the purposes of this, means time trials, codified races, leaderboards, ghosts, and then a whole bunch of sprinkling of other stuff like VR support and flight sticks and all of that kind of fun stuff. So, if any of that at all tickles your bumhole a little bit, go and add it to your wishlist, because this game is and will always be completely free, for reasons that I will get into later on. And if it tickles your bumhole a lot, you know, slap the crap out of the subscribe button, star it on GitHub, follow me on Twitter, come join the Discord, whatever, come and get involved, because there's all sorts of stuff going on right now. So, I mean, if the game is going to be free, why am I putting it on Steam? Why am I giving Daddy Gay Ben another $100 just so that I can put it on Steam? That's a fair question. But I think the first one, the most important one, is that it already has more wish lists on Steam than it does downloads on itch.io. And it did better on itch.io than I thought it would, so that's kind of crazy, because this is the first time I'm even mentioning the Steam release. And if you want to just go and play it and faff around yourself, if you already have a Steam key, it's on the mainline branch now. You can go and have a play, and there'll be a build up on itch.io and so on and so forth. But on Steam, the public release does not go live until the 20th, which is just in time for a big Steam Indie Racing Festival, which I'm pretty excited about. And that gives me about 2 weeks to tidy up any loose ends, fix any bugs, add a little bit more content and so on before kind of people can start leaving reviews and things like that. If you do want to get involved on the Steam version, in particular for leaderboards and stuff like that, just hit me up on the Discord. I will send you a key right away, no questions. It's all cool. I'm probably going to switch to doing major releases on itch.io and quick rapid releases. Don't believe her lies. On Steam. Because doing all of the builds and faffing around on itch is a bit of a pain, whereas on Steam I could just click a button and poof, straight up there, which is pretty cool. But the other reasons are primarily around what we gain as a community of people playing the game from Steam. We get multiplayer without having to be a network admin, which is always nice, so you don't have to forward ports or anything like that. And primarily, for me, we get leaderboards, working, actual, functional leaderboards, and I don't have to go away and do a bunch of work implementing it on a back-end system myself and blah blah blah. I just have to integrate with Steam, which is totally fine and totally easy to do. So let's talk about why it's free. Because that's not normal, right? I've poured a lot of time into this. I've still got tons to do. But at the end of the day, this is a game that I want to will into existence. It's a game that I want to play. And if there's one thing that everybody knows about indie game dev, it is don't make a multiplayer game. Don't make a hugely community-driven game. Because if there's nobody playing it, there's not much point in it existing, is there really? And being as it's a game that I want to play and I want to be involved in, I want as many people as possible to get involved. Now what that means at the end of the day is the lowest possible barrier to entry. And I'm not talking about freemium crap, I'm not talking about loot boxes or any of that shite. I just want to make a fun thing for once in this awful bloody world. Between being terrified of the literal actual plague and being turned to radioactive vapor by pissed off Russians, let's just have a nice thing. And look, if it takes off, then maybe we can look at other ways of like monetizing and supporting it, like Patreon or like downloadable DLC ships or some things that don't affect the core gameplay, not levels, not like special modes or any of that stuff. Pure cosmetic things that would allow me to spend more time on it, basically. And if it really takes off, then like maybe we can get together a team, make a sequel, and if that's something that you're interested in, then, you know, hit me up, because you can make some cool stuff, you know. Alright, anyway, with all of that crap out of the way, let's talk about what's new, because there's a lot that's new. So let's jump into Unity. After wine. Wine is important. Alright, so it's going to be kind of difficult to talk about all of these new features because they all sort of intertwine. So you're going to probably see things and be like, wait, what the hell is that? I will get to it eventually. If you just want to jump to things, pop into the timestamps in the description. That's all cool. So, when you first boot up the game, whether or not you're a new player or an existing player, you're going to see this screen. And let me actually just make that visible on the video. Okay, cool. So what this is essentially saying is that there are now two control schemes in the game. They are completely segregated, so all of your bindings are still there, don't worry. They now live in Advanced. If you choose Arcade, there are no custom bindings. You cannot modify them. The benefit of this is you can jump between the two at any time. And as you can see here, we've got two other options that you can't do anything with if Arcade is selected. If you enable Advanced, all of a sudden you can enable ship rotation. If you disable that, you can also tweak flight assist. Ship rotation requires flight assist. Now, we'll jump into the specifics of what Arcade is later and why it exists, but suffice to say, if you're a new player and you've never played Elite Dangerous, you've never played any other flight sims, keep it on Arcade for now, work your way up, I think is the best way to look at it. It's a kind of progressive learning sort of thing. So we'll jump into the controls of that later, but anyway, once you've chosen this, you'll then be immediately presented with your profile. If you're on the Steam version, you cannot modify your name anymore. That's now from Steam. So it's your public name on Steam, not your login name or anything like that. And we also have this country drop down, which, yes, was an absolute pain in the arse. And all of this goes onto the leaderboards, onto downloaded ghosts. You can see the flag next to usernames, and in multiplayer as well. And yes, for Sandling, I've also gone and put Scotland, Wales, and even put the Cross of St. George for all of the Brexit people. No, this is serious, no politics. It was a joke. Don't take it seriously, what have I done? Yes, there's many hundreds of flags. This was a pain in the arse, so please use it. And once you've chosen your ship and all of your pilot stuff, we're back to the main menu. You'll also notice down here we actually have the patch notes embedded, and this is to kind of facilitate this supposed rapid release that I'm going to be doing. So I can now hopefully put out just small fixes, you know, small additions, the odd level here, that kind of stuff. And you don't have to go and dig into like Steam stuff to figure out what's changed. It'll always be here. If you open it up, the most current thing will be here. Cool. And all of the historical stuff is in here as well if you really want to dig into all of the old releases. Cool. Now on the multiplayer side, we have a server list. This is basically exactly the same as it was previously with the non-Steam version of the game. You create a lobby, but now we actually get a server list that's registering through Steam. It's actually called a Steam lobby room or something like that. It doesn't matter. And we've got a lobby that's been created and blah 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 blah. The importance of this though is you don't have to do any networking nonsense. You don't have to share your IP address or anything like that. You can just join through Steam, join through the what's it called, the server browser, and that's all cool. Which is just a huge quality of life improvement. So I hope people get some use out of this. I know that there's not much to do in multiplayer just yet. It's still just locked to the free roam game mode. I'm hoping for the true like public early access release, which is 2 weeks from now, from when this video goes live, that I can get something in here, but it depends on priorities because I've got a bunch of stuff that I want to get in, but you know, time is fleeting. And it's worth saying as well that all of this UI has had a nice overhaul, so it's now navigable with a control pad. Well, was before, but much more so now. So when I click things, and I press B, it'll take you straight back, and you know, it hooks into that cancel call and deals with it that way. So all of a sudden this is a lot more usable and friendly, and also when you navigate around, it highlights the entire row, and when you press A on that row, it'll activate the element. If I press A, press B on that, it'll go back to there and not cancel if I press it again. You know, all of that good fun UX stuff to make it a little bit more living room friendly. It's not perfect yet, there's still some work to do there, but it's a lot better, and hopefully we can get to a point where we're no longer reliant on the mouse. So let's jump into a game. And we're gonna go with Shore. No, I want yellow. Yes, there's some more environments to play with. Cool, look at that. So, first and foremost, please be aware that there are new bindings for the camera, so I can now look around in the cockpit, which is awesome. But obviously, if you had anything mapped to the right stick, actually no, thinking about it, on advanced, I only use the D-pad. I've left the right stick alone, but in arcade it uses the right stick. But they are also bound to the numpad on the keyboard down here. And C is reserved now for changing the camera. We have cameras, different cameras now. How cool is that? And Y on the gamepad to switch between those cameras. Now, if you're in arcade mode, you'll see a control layout that tells you all of this stuff. So I resisted for a long time the idea of having a third-person camera. I really don't know why. I think it was just some sort of misguided, Elite Dangerous puritanism or something. But I really, really resisted it. I liked the idea of forcing it to be in a cockpit, and that's, in retrospect, really childish of me, because this is great fun. And it's super zen and super chill flying around. And I can't believe I've waited this long to get a third-person perspective in here, because it's brilliant. If I do say so myself. And in external cameras, the camera rotation rotates around the ship rather than up and down. When you're on the front, it's looking around, kind of like mouse look sort of style, and on the nose camera, similar kind of thing. We also now have, yes I do, we now have reflections, real-time reflections off the ship, which is deeply satisfying. It looks absolutely brilliant going through the checkpoint rings, but it's quite expensive. They default to low, you can turn them up in the advanced settings. And there's a bunch of extra advanced settings to do with the camera if you want to dig into it as well. And by default, right click on the mouse allows you to just do straight up mouse look. So if you're one of these people that uses eye tracking, potentially you can hook it up with some scripting to the mouse before I get an actual head tracker API SDK thing in place. You may have already noticed as well that the space dust has had a little bit of an overhaul. Previously it kind of looked like it was snowing everywhere. Now we have these beautiful GPU line particles being generated, and the opacity is based on your percentage of your maximum speed. So the faster you're going, the more opaque they become. And these are fully 3D volumes of particles. So like if I move the camera to the side, you can see them over here, and I so much more prefer them. They're way better. And you've also probably noticed that there is smoke coming out of the back of that ship. How cool is that? I've gotten rid of the old trails for now, the light trails, because they were kind of a little bit glitchy, really was the problem. Whenever there was any kind of lag or stutter and stuff like that, you could see the kind of jaggedness of them. And because of the way they functioned, I could only ever have them working while boosting. And with the ghost system, the replay system, they would have just never worked. So they've had to go. I may bring them back and look at them as some other kind of similar feature, because I did quite like having these really vivid, bright light trails, but later. I much prefer the GPU particles. They actually have inertia and drag and weight and things like that. And they're just incredibly satisfying to see that trail behind you. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting carried away with that. Let's consult the gigantic checklist of things to talk about. Like, for real, this one is worse than last time. It's horrific. But anyway, so let's talk about leaderboards, because leaderboards are cool and they are a really core, integral part of the game that I've wanted to have in for a long time. So now when you go into time trial, previously you would click on a map you wanted to play. I will try and get a couple more maps in for the actual release, so take this with a grain of salt. I'm recording this a few days beforehand because for once I'd like to be prepared and calm. Anyway, when you click on one of these now, the whole UI flows. Oof. How fucking sexy is that? So you press B and A and B. Mate, I love that. Anyway, now we have a leaderboard on the left, and you can show the top 20, which is what it defaults to. You can show just yourself if there's more than, 5 people here. And thank you, all of these lovely people, for testing this all out with me. That's been amazing. And you can just show you and your friends if you want to compare yourself to... I'm not friends with Ray. Oh. Ray. Hello, dog. Well, anyway, so I've got a couple of ghosts over here, but I can add another one, and when I download them, it just immediately pops in, automatically enables them. I can just add as many as I want and turn them all on. I can have 1, 0, all of them, whatever. There's actually no limit. There will be a point at which your computer dies, but that's a you problem, frankly. Now, when I start this, we should see a bunch of ships appear. How cool is that? This adds so much to the experience for me. Apologies if this is running a bit crap, by the way. Capturing while running it in the editor, not the best experience. Oops. And yeah, I absolutely love being able to have people, like ghosts of people in the game with me. It's deeply satisfying. And this whole system was an absolute pain in the arse to get working, as you can imagine. And now when you finish, you get medals assigned, you get the leaderboard up, all of that UI is in there now, which is lovely. And if you are a developer looking to implement replays and ghosts and multiplayer and any of that stuff in a infinite sized world with the whole floating origin stuff, please hit me up. I'll be happy to spend some time with you because this was an absolute nightmare. And I'm really, really pleased with the result. It works across, well, infinite distance, and all of the individual thrusters fire on the ship, and the boost sounds happen and stuff, which is... speaking of which, well, first of all, we now have progression, so we'll remember the level, we'll jump to the next level, so there's a sense of actually progressing through the maps. You know, which sounds trivial, but fuck you, this stuff is hard, alright? It's difficult. Now, speaking of the sounds that the ghosts make, they make the same amount of noise as you, so when they fire a boost, it's pretty loud. To combat that, ghosts have their own sound effect mixer on here. This is a percentage of the sound effect volume, which in turn is a percentage of the master volume. So, defaults to 25, I'd probably keep it around there. Oh yeah! Also, we have music in the game, but you're gonna have to download it to see what that's like, because I can't be bothered setting it all up right now. And I'm sure some of you will hate it, and I don't care because music is subjective. If you got any suggestions, hit me up. Alright, before we go on any further, there's one thing I want to quickly diverge and talk about, to do with the checkpoints, which I just now remembered are brand new since the last release, but these were like one of the first things I added months ago at this point. So yeah, we have some new checkpoint models, which is neat because like these are huge, but also kind of intricate and interesting because you have to really carefully try and get through these little tiny gaps if you want the absolute best time. But anyway, that's not what I want to talk about, although they are kind of neat. So what we have here is a time trial map that's baked into the game, and it's one of the longer time trial maps as well. It keeps going, and it's quite a long and narrow canyon. And this on the left is the actual tiles, like the terrain tiles that have been generated. The way this works, on like the default setting anyway, is that we have 3x3 drawn around where the player ship is, and then a further 5x5, well, an extra 5 on the outside of what are called draft tiles. These are very, very low resolution, but it means that you can see like the vague outline of a mountain in the distance, and as you get closer to it, it loads in proper, right? So I'm going to quickly fly around here, and you'll notice that the map will move a little bit with us. That's the floating origin correction and stuff. As I leave this map, watch for the stutter in the main game window about now. You see that? Oh, gross. And a bunch of shit comes out in the console and stuff. And you can see we've loaded some extra terrain and unloaded the terrain behind us. And that's generally just how it works when you're flying around in free roam mode, right? Like, how else can it work? Isn't infinite terrain. It generates new stuff as you go, and it unloads the stuff behind you so that it's not constantly eating up all of your memory. Makes sense. However, in a race environment, in a time trial environment, that performance dip is kind of unacceptable. When you're trying to shave milliseconds off of your time, and every time you go over some unknown barrier, it slows down. It's kind of disgusting. So I've come up with a really, really, really brain-dead, stupid, simple optimization for this, which is I am tagging the player and the checkpoint with the same tag of terrain gem. And I'm looking for all objects with this type now and using that to generate the terrain around it. As I say, this is a very, very simple, brute force, boneheaded optimization for this particular problem, because all we're doing is effectively preloading all of the terrain. And you might say, oh, what's wrong with that? Well, there's no clever logic to say, like, just preload it and don't render it. It's going to render everything, as you can see here. So, this is the exact same terrain as before. And oh my god, stop stealing my bloody mouse. I click on this. Now you can see we've got the same tiles around the player, but if I were to highlight the track, there we go, you can see now where each of the checkpoints are on this map, and the extent of where they are, like in this cube. So this one here is the furthest south one, That one, being the sole thing in this cube, in this square rather, is forcing these 3 down here to generate. That might seem extremely heavy-handed, right? But there is terrain LODs, so it's not strictly rendering all of that stuff, but it is in memory. There is, of course, a performance trade-off here, whereby we're loading more, we're showing more, we're storing more, and so on and so forth. I think the loading trade-off is worth it, because you'll now notice on the right-hand side that there are no stutters when I go over these lines. I can do the entire map, and it is a smooth, consistent frame rate. I say smooth, it's not amazing, because doing anything in the editor with things selected and stuff like that is... it's bad. But in release mode, I promise you, it's consistent. So whatever frame rate you're getting 30 frames a second, you're getting 30 frames a second for the whole race, which is important to me, right? So yeah, let me know about this one, because I'm really curious to know if there are any edge cases where this runs really badly or whatever. But I think this is a really worthwhile change, and I think it'll make a huge difference to the competitiveness of these tracks. Otherwise, like, it's kind of based on how many CPU cores you have, and that's shit, right? Alright, I want to spend a little bit of time now talking about why the arcade input model exists and how it works, because this is a whole thing. It's like a nice sunrise. Sweet. Boop, boop. So, the way that the arcade input works is that it interprets your rotation based on lateral movement. So the only inputs in the arcade mode are up, down, left and right, forward and backward. That's pretty much all you need. Oh, and A is boost. And then on top of that there is B for the velocity limiter, which is an advanced thing anyway, but it needed a binding. And the right stick to look around, which is, just the camera. God damn, how nice do the reflections look on that ship. Jesus Christ. Sorry, I keep catching it and just being like, they're just fucking gorgeous. Anyway. And what this means is that when you're turning left and right, effectively, if you keep holding left, you're going to get into a weird spiral, right? You still need to be able to control it to the extent that you turn and then you use up and down to actually move yourself around. But you get really quickly used to it, and it feels great. Like, I've had an absolute blast playing with this. But these are the kind of features that take a long time, and I think they're worth it for the polish and for the onboarding experience of new users. So look, I know a lot of you guys who are already playing the game are going to be like, I already play Elite Dangerous, like, I know how to control a ship, why should I care about any of this? Because, oh god, look at those reflections, they're so good! So, there's a couple of things to that. I think first is that this game has always intended to be a training ground for Elite Dangerous, but also I've always kind of wanted it to be a springboard as well. I think that Elite Dangerous is kind of impenetrable, right? Like, if you just want to do a little bit of nice flying, go and see the sights, go and see what it's like in VR and all of that stuff, the learning curve is absolutely brutal. And in fact, Up Is Not Jump did an outstanding video. It's like one of my favourite videos that he's ever done.
It's like a checklist that says, these are the things you need to do. Go and learn what they are and how to do them.
Shifting the power between systems, engines, and weapons will mean you have power where you need it, when you need it.
Flight assist off.
How do you fly this fucking thing?
Go and watch it. It's superb. It is better now than when he did that video, but it's still a slog, right? Like, you've got to put in the hours to get to the point where you can do any, like, racing, flying, doing anything silly. Like, there's a billion other things in Elite, and that's fine. That's not the kind of game that Elite is. But also think about what the intersection is of the two games that I'm trying to marry here. We have Elite Dangerous on one hand, this intensely in-depth, really crazy, you know, space flight sim game. And we have Trackmania, a game where there are 4 buttons, literally forward, backwards, left, right. I'm not going to beat that, right? But I can distill it down to as core an essence as possible. It needs the boost mechanic because that is central to what makes, I believe, Elite Dangerous's flying model so engaging. But I wanted that ability to pick up and play, and it's been absolutely amazing being able to pass the game to my friends or give my friend the Steam key and just say, look, have a go at my game, tell me what you think. And not have to be like, and this is, you know, what role is, and this is yaw, and this is how... you know what I mean? It goes on and on and on, right? Now, there's nothing stopping you as someone who's interested in Elite jumping into Fly Dangerous, doing a bit of racing, doing a bit of hooning, and maybe kind of bringing yourself into Elite. Maybe you're someone who already plays Elite, which is awesome. Then you've got a training ground, right, for racing, for flight assist off training. Now, I got into Elite, like, full disclosure, entirely because of VR. I wanted to see what the sights looked like. I wanted to see what it felt like to fly a spaceship in VR, really, right? And if it wasn't for VR, I almost certainly would have bounced right off of it, because Elite Dangerous is a brutally hard game to learn. Unless you're, like, super into that stuff, right? Which I don't really consider myself. Well, I do now, but I didn't. And what I found when I kind of scratched beneath the surface was a wonderful flight model, like a really in-depth, interesting, weighty flight model that has nuance and subtlety in ways I never imagined, right? I've never played a game before where you hit the boost and you are in for the ride, like you can't stop it, the brake don't do shit, right? There is something incredibly satisfying about throwing the weight of the ship around and making a very purposeful decision to fire that boost, because once it's lit, you gotta ride it out, and that is awesome. Like, I've played other games that have got like afterburner style, you know, you can just press a little bit of boost and a little bit of boost, like Burnout style. Doesn't do it for me. It's just not as complex or interesting. So I want the simplicity of Trackmania, and I want the nuance of Elite Dangerous. And if I can bring people into Elite Dangerous, all the better, because honestly, it's a phenomenal game. You know, it's having its ups and downs right now, like they cancelled the console games, the console ports, which really fucking sucks. But if you've got a PC, if you can play it, if you've got a flight stick, especially if you've got VR, give it a go. Honestly, it's brilliant. For the money, you'll have a blast, right? You'll start to find things that annoy you about it and whatever, but the flight model, the graphics, the sound aren't any of those things. They're just phenomenal. And that, in a nutshell, is my TED Talk as to why an accessible, simplified control scheme is, I think, important. And I think if you're used to flight sticks and stuff, either way, give it a go. Give it a go on your TV downstairs. If you've got a Steam Deck, give it a go on that. I'd love to see what that's like. I should buy a Steam Deck. Okay, let's talk quickly about an experimental feature that I've got in here, and I'd like some feedback on, because there's a lot going on here. This is a new terrain type. There's quite a lot of different terrains now, and I'm hoping to merge them all together into a single terrain that has lots of variety, so that we can bring back that kind of spirit of exploration, finding cool places, building their own racetracks from Elite Dangerous kind of way of doing things. But in the meantime, I want to know how this is performing on people's machines. Now, what this is foliage, a lot of, like a ridiculous amount of foliage, the maximum I can get away with, right? And there's no way at the moment to control the density of that foliage, or, well, basically anything about it. It's either on or it's off, right? Now, one thing I will say is that please make sure you've turned off screen space ambient occlusion. It is a graphics card killer, especially with this much geometry. I've also added soft shadows, which is nice. And you might also notice, getting off topic of it here, every single thing in this bloody menu has a written description of what it is at the bottom. Yes, that was a pain in the ass, and yes, you are welcome. But soft shadows really worth turning on if your GPU can handle it. It makes a huge difference because the shadows that we're dealing with here typically are at such a large range that you get a lot of rounding error, right? So Z fighting and stuff. Soft shadows smooths a lot of that crap over. Worth enabling. Anyway, let's jump in. This also remembers your last options now once you click go, which I know one person at least will be very, very pleased with. So when this loads in, you'll notice a just staggering, ridiculous amount of foliage. Just millions and millions of flowers. Like, go big or go home, right? Like, let's have all of the flowers. And I'm just curious as to how this runs on people's machines. I've had it running downstairs on a 1080, no problem. I had to turn off screen space ambient occlusion though, otherwise I got like 10 frames a second or something horrendous. But I think this really adds to the sense of scale, being able to see this much. I mean, to be honest, the scale is still off, right? Like, I can turn these into like big bushes and shrubbery and things like that and have a lot of variation and variety and stuff. It's like, look how huge these these grasses are, like 3 times the size of the ship, but that's irrelevant, right? Because I can bake them as large patches of grass. The important thing is how it performs, so I'm really curious to get some numbers back from people, and if people think it's worth pursuing, like, am I just wasting a bunch of time on this? Because I really like it, but it adds nothing to gameplay. Like, by design, right? Like, I can't have foliage add anything to gameplay, because if you turn it off, then you're playing a different game, right? There are trees in this as well, and they have like proper LODs and billboarding and stuff, and you can get right up close with them. And they too are kind of massive and kind of simple and kind of tacky looking, but whatever, I quite like the stylized nature of them. And they do detect collisions as well, so I can like smash through these things and they just disappear, right? But if I can detect the collision, then I can do things like spawn a whole bunch of twigs and trees and make like scraping on the canopy noises and things like that. But it's all a case of like, is that worth putting the time and effort into? I think it is, because I'm a massive child, but you know, I'm also open to suggestion on this one. God, Jesus Christ, I love those reflections so much. I mean, oh, they're so good. They're so good. Anyway, what else have we got in here? Oh, some flight model tweaks. This is... I need to fix that. When you press A to resume, you also boost. There has been some tweaks to the flight model with regards to flight assist in particular. Okay? This is because the... Actually, no, flight assist and flight assist off. So, anyway, what it boils down to is that the amount of available torque, which is this multiplier here, has been doubled. Okay? Now, what that means, in a nutshell, is that you can turn really quickly, right? Like, that's very maneuverable compared to what it was before. That's double the speed. Well, double the acceleration, not the total speed. So you can get up to full rotation speed very, very quickly. And with flight assist off, that does make it a little bit twitchy. I know Sandling will be very happy with that as a default, because basically that's something that he changes himself all the time anyway. But having got a bunch of feedback from some testers, one big thing that came back, particular thank you Mark, is that it felt way too floaty in this arcade style, right? Whereas with this, you can boost and very quickly change your vector. and that is incredibly satisfying. Now, one side effect of that is that flight assist became basically God mode, right? Like, you turn rotational flight assist on, the amount of available torque meant that the ship was able to right itself basically immediately, right? Like, you'd let go and it would just be like, whoosh, snap, right? It doesn't do that anymore. So basically what I've done is I've compensated by increasing the linear interpolation time of rotational flight assist. So it worked out quite nicely actually, because it's functionally the same as before, but you can rapidly change your vector manually by putting in input. Yet when you let go, the flight assist doesn't like magically bring you back in like a quarter of a second. It takes a little tiny bit longer than it did previously. So there's still a downside to using it, but you can also correct for it yourself. And I feel like that is a sort of gateway drug into FA off, right? Like, if you can get good at correcting assisted rotations yourself, you're well on the way to learning flight assist off entirely. So, oh yeah, look at this big bowl. That's cool. That's super cool. I could make an interesting track here. Okay. I think there's not a great deal else I want to cover. There is more stuff in here that's in the changelog. Go and have a perusal. There's all sorts of other tweaks, fixes, changes, and so on and so forth. You know, a friend of mine keeps telling me that I'm the kind of person that needs a big project or I go a bit mad. And, you know, I think they're right. I am that kind of person. And this whole thing here, whatever this is my current project to stop me from going mad. God, look at those reflections. Oh, it's so good. And look, if you're not here for that, you just want to play the game, that's totally fine by me. Honestly, that's the best thing. People playing your game is awesome. But if you are here for that and you want to get a bit more involved, then all you wonderful weirdos on the Discord who post strange shit on there, you know who you are. Thank you. Like, genuinely thank you. It honestly makes this whole crazy thing so much more worth it, being able to interact with you guys and chat shit with you on the Discord. It makes all of this less of a grind. So, whoever you are, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you guys next time.